During the making of Sixth Sense, Knight told me about an idea that he had, but he couldn't tell me anything about it. I said, okay, I'll do it. Just let me know when I can see it. I guess about a year, almost a year and a half went by. And he showed it to me and I said, oh, good, okay.
This is normally the first act of a movie, this whole movie. And I'm going to make an entire movie of the first act, the entire movie about a guy realizing he's a superhero.
So that's how it popped into my head. The idea.
After I've outlined it, I try to do 6 pages a day until the first draft is done. And that's how I start technically. And then I set little deadlines for myself, you know, second draft, third draft, fourth draft. Started out a very traditional movie where the first act was him realizing his power, the second act is him fighting good and bad, and then the third act is fighting the ultimate villain. And it just didn't respond to me. The second and third acts, I didn't connect with. I didn't connect with that person, and I connected a lot with somebody realizing something extraordinary about themselves.
This movie, by definition, is an origin story. It's the birth of a comic book hero. Unbreakable was pretty easy because we had a lot of the same people from The Sixth Sense who we wanted to bring back. We made a couple of changes because of people who weren't available. We had a different cinematographer, so the movie had a different visual style to it. We had a different editor, and I think that lent a different style to it.
We met, all of us as a group, about 4 times in the course of the 4.5 months for, 2-3 days at a time, and basically talked specifics of what was in the shot, what the image should do, what the desired effect was for sound and music and all the issues.
Knight definitely has a vision and a plan, but I think he is really good at getting the best out of everybody who works with him. And in order to get the best out of people, you want to be open to their ideas and welcome their ideas and take all the good ones and use them.
There's no black and white characters in the movie. That the good person, the hero, has flaws, and that the villain is very endearing and has wonderful qualities about him.
Knight wanted us to create a very literal world which was instantly recognizable, as if this incredible story could be happening right down the street. He wanted to create a sense of normalcy in David Dunn's house, to act in counterpoint to the incredible nature of the story that's happening to him.
My character really needs to be as surprised by what's happening to him as the audience does.
I mean, here's a guy that's, never been sick, never been hurt.
It's grounded in real human beings who experience real emotions, who have real families, who have real problems that we can all kind of recognize.
It's kind of funny because you watch the movie, Bruce has got a scar, where'd he get that?
These kind of ideas of villains and heroes are kind of from within normal people, and it comes out. The movie is very, very close to the storyboard, so I mean, in a way, you can see the entire movie before we shoot it. I can walk you through the entire movie and tell you how it's going to feel.
It's very important to know as early as possible what the camera moves and the camera shots might be. If a crane or something very specific is involved, that helps us better design the set.
As an editor, storyboards are useful for me in terms of understanding the director's idea.
For him, the camera only moves to reflect a change of emotion, never on the move, not on the physical movement.
In Unbreakable, there are over 30 scenes that are all shot in one take. It's scary to do because we never shot any safety coverage. He just knew that this is how the shot was going to appear in the film.
Basically, the #1 benefit of pacing it like that is that you feel part of that world more so. It helps me achieve a symbiotic relationship between the main character and the audience, which is the goal.
The setting and the location and the world that filmmakers create is always an important character of the film. And in particular in Unbreakable, there were really two worlds that were created. There was the world of David Dunn, and there was the world of Elijah Price, the Samuel Jackson character.
There was a big sort of design premise, which was that the David Dunn world was a warm world, and then the Elijah world was a cold, steely world.
Ultimately, we learn that he is a superhero. And so the idea was that as we went through the movie, at certain points, color could be added, more sort of primary type colors that you would have in a comic book.
Knight has very strong opinions about how his characters should look. I would think that because of the bizarreness of Sam's character, it might have been a little easier for them to find things for me to wear. Mostly shapeless clothes in this particular film. It's not my finest hour style-wise.
The main big design thing for him was the waterproof poncho, which then, when he goes to do his heroic act, takes on a mantle of hero, so then we're going into the comic book scenario. And originally we were going to push the fabric as well as the whole scale and structure of the garment, to give it all this sort of sense of drama. In the end, we kept the nature of the fabric the same, but so we just changed the scale of it. So as he goes through that sequence, it becomes slightly more dramatic. It's very subtle. And so unless you really study it, you wouldn't notice it.
I think my only contribution was purple. Only because I thought of Elijah as very regal, and that's the color for regality.
So establish this sort of turtleneck and this purple colour that comes into play in his childhood. Then when we see him in the comic book store for the first time as an adult, he's got these things going, the blacks and the purples and the turtleneck,
That was my idea, the glass cane. It was a great look. It was something that was almost transparent that he walked with, that he used, so he had this gait and he had this transparent thing with this silver top, and it was kind of elegant to me, that you could see through it, and it was a statement of sorts. Sturdy but fragile.
I based his hair on Frederick Douglass, which is this sort of slightly sort of sideways thing. So that's the one thing about him, which everything else is all kind of, perfect, and then there's just this slight kind of off-balance thing on the head.
A lot of talk about that hair. I don't, it's like, hey, it's just a character.
Another reason to build that kind of structure where David would go from cool to warm and Elijah from warm to cool, it was the idea of reflections and inverted images and symmetrical things, because there is something symmetric about Elijah and David.
Good cannot exist without evil, and evil cannot exist without good. And so basically, Elijah's character needed to find the hero so he could take his mantle and be the villain.
We had very specific colors for each character. Sam Jackson had his purple color. David Dunn had, his green color. We introduced in the final sequence, or the sequence that leads up to the final sequence, color that started out as sort of muted color and then became stronger as David Dunn starts to perceive his powers.
When we see David Dunn in the train, there's that little girl when the camera's going back and forth. She was a colour pop, in that bright yellow. So we used sort of the comic book idea of colour pops and tried to choreograph it, I suppose, really, so that you had always this sort of little interesting thing that you were drawn to that could be a signal or something of importance.
More and more as I make movies, I find out how important sound is to movies and storytelling and the creation of atmosphere by sound. And in Unbreakable was really kind of my most ambitious ideas for the movie. And so, I brought in Richard King, and he started working on the movie really early on and started preparing sound effects for all the scenes that we were editing, and we told him one thing, which was, don't use any sounds that have been used before. Don't use anything from a library. I want the film to have a completely unique feel, something original that we've never heard before.
The scene where Elijah's falling down the stairs, we only hear the sound of him falling down the stairs when we see him. It cuts back and forth between relative silence and these horrible bone cracks as he's careening down the stairs. When he reaches the bottom of the stairs, he has this moment of horrible realization that David did see this gun. And the way, again, Knight designed that scene gave us the opportunity to use various subway train sounds, pitched to different degrees. We also used pitched wolf howls, a pack of wolves howlings, and is the sound that segues into the next scene, which is David pulling up in the bus, getting out and meeting his son.
One thing we did on Unbreakable that was great is to have James Newton Howard, the composer, start composing the music based on the script.
The thing that we talked about mostly was the idea that the music be, and this is a word he used a lot, have a singular quality to it. A singular quality meaning that, you know, the kind of thing that you could hear just one or two or three or four or five notes from and immediately say, ah, that's the music from Unbreakable. And that's not just in terms of melody, a thing you can whistle, but somehow that the music would have a quality to it, a tonality, a life of its own, a personality that would be just as distinctive as the film.
This is East Rail 177. Next stop, Philadelphia.
Unbreakable for me was by far the most I've ever put my performance in the hands of the director. He was always right on with how he saw the character, and I wanted to honor that.
When you're watching the film for the first time, you're just watching a story and you don't know exactly where it's going. When the film ends, you realize that what you've seen is, in a way, very similar to a comic book. And I think it would be interesting for people, when they go back and watch the movie a second time, to observe the ways in which this film is existing on two levels. It's existing on the level of a realistic story of a man who's a security guard and a man who has osteogenesis imperfecta, and the way that those two lives intersect. But it's also interesting to watch how this movie is a film version of a comic book.
I think I wanted to make feature-length Twilight Zones, you know, where something amazing happens in the last second and you realize you weren't watching what you thought you were watching.